Good afternoon. It's time for another episode of Never Punt, Never Parlay, college football show that talks about betting and some lines. I'm your host, Parker Fleming. I have alongside me, as I will this Tuesday through the end of college football season and beyond, Douglas Farmer. Douglas, how are you today?
Parker, I'm doing pretty well because today there is no football. Tuesday, October 3rd, there is no football. But do you know what is different about today and the next 50 days of the year?
Oh, I think I saw this tweet. It's something like we have a football game every day consecutively, if you count the NFL and college.
And while I don't watch much NFL, that's only 2 days a week. So we're saying 5/7 of those 50 days, there's college football on. There's college football to enjoy. So there might not be any tonight, but I'm pretty good about that. And for that matter, we're going to get into one of those games for tomorrow night by the end of this show.
Yeah, we are. I love a little weeknight football. Love a little weeknight football last week where I went 3-0 before Saturday and was just absolutely chilling there. So that was kind of nice. And again, I do like some of these midweek games. I think it's a joke. Some people say like, oh, the sicko games or whatever. I think we're legitimately getting some good matchups now that Conference USA has started on the weeknight too. There's some low key kind of sneaky, really, really good good games. But Douglas, let's go ahead and let's dive into to recapping last week and looking at kind of some things that went down. There's a game I want to start with, but I'm going to hold off because I think it's going to set us up later to hit into our futures. But let's start off with Texas just beating the brakes off of Kansas. Absolute crock-potting game was, I think, one score towards the end of the third quarter, and Texas was just leaning on them. And then finally the dam broke, and Texas really exposed Kansas' defense in that game. Are we looking at a Texas team that might be back, Douglas?
You keep dropping the four-letter word. We're on air. We try not to get the explicit rating. We're only 2 minutes into the show and you're dropping the four-letter B word. Come on, Parker. Keep it PG. You're focusing on is Texas back. They exposed Kansas's defense. I think they also kind of exposed Kansas's offense. If you look at Kansas's season so far, when they're going against a decent pass defense, they're in trouble. The only decent pass defenses they faced were Texas, gave up 14 points. BYU, who's not even that good of a pass defense. And if you take out two defensive touchdowns, Kansas scored only 24 points. I'm starting to think we might know how to fade Kansas when they're facing a decent pass defense. Not necessarily applicable this weekend. Central Florida's pass defense by your EPA per pass against rankings is number 72. So it's kind of maybe Kansas, and then I think Kansas is 2-point favorite. But I'm starting to look at that as yes, Texas might be the B word, but more so we might know how to fade Kansas.
Yeah, and certainly Jalen Daniels was out, but I'm honestly not inclined to believe that he was really going to be able to do very much more than what Kansas did on offense. Either way, they're third and they lived and died on third and fourth downs against Illinois, against Nevada, against these really bad teams, and then they just died on third downs against Texas. And I really don't believe that's so much as easy as, hey, if we had a starting quarterback, this would have been different. They were outmatched the entire game, and this was a true crock-potting. I have a future on Kansas under 6, getting a little sweaty with that win over BYU, and still very much might be in doubt. But seeing the cracks in the pass defense, seeing the kind of ceiling on the offense, especially if Daniels is hurt or, as is rumored, it might be sitting out some games, I think we kind of understand where the ceiling is on this Kansas team. Looking around the nation elsewhere, USC 48, Colorado 41. Why does USC continue to refuse to play defense?
I think my line all offseason was I'll believe in Notre Dame's receivers when I'll see them, and I'll believe in USC's defense when I see it. We're really coming to a point where those two are going to go head to head, and we're going to have to see one of them on October 14th, but I haven't seen either one. USC, you can't give up 41 points to I know Colorado has some playmakers. It's not a 41-point conference play type of offense unless it's going against Stanford or Arizona State. So I do not understand how Lincoln Riley keeps letting this happen, how Alex Grinch still has this plum gig, and there's no sign of a reckoning coming. I'll believe in USC's defense when I see it, and if we don't see it October 14th, we're not going to see it this season.
Yeah, I think that's very true. Some of that might have been the interest factor, Colorado with a late push there, but the defense just I think started the season and thought, hey, it's kind of bad because of San Jose State, and then maybe thought, oh, maybe it's playing a little better, and realizing that's related to quality of opponent. USC is who they are. They're a Lincoln Riley team that's going to have an elite offense and it's going to score more than most of their opponents. And when the defense really needs to matter, it's going to be on the losing end, which is just is what it is. Other game. Okay, the game I want to get to. Enough about the Power Five. The game that I really want to get to, not to rub anybody's noses in anything, because this was an absolute disaster of a game. I watched it. It was hilarious. Louisiana Tech 24, UTEP 10. No starting quarterback for either team here. Both of these teams are really, really bad. I think UTEP might be cataclysmically bad. I think they might be an absolute disaster there, but getting Louisiana Tech at plus money just felt too good to be true. They really helped it out. You didn't have to sweat this one at all if you were on Louisiana Tech, because they had a big play touchdown early and then a special teams or maybe defensive touchdown right there at the beginning too. And really that just put it away. There's no way UTEP's coming back from a 14-point deficit with that offense right now. So Douglas, I do believe that brings us even on beer bets pending the result of the Louisiana Tech and UTEP final standings. We doubled down, correct?
I do not believe we doubled down. We simply acknowledged this was the only data point that would eventually matter. I mean, UTEP right now,
have to check the tape.
At best, is going to go 4-8. They've got 3 Wednesday games coming up, not tomorrow, but then the 3 following Wednesdays at Florida International, v New Mexico State, at Sam Houston State. You have to win those 3 to even get to 4 wins for UTEP. And I'm saying at best they're going 4-8. So yeah, like I'm not giving you the beer yet, but if I'm saying at best UTEP is 4-8 with one of those words against FCS level incarnate word, then I'm expecting to owe you this beer. I am not. I'm telling myself this helped our show record. You put Louisiana Tech on the record. You getting that helped the show, and maybe I can still find my way to. They're not going to beat Louisiana Tech in the standings. They're not going to.
And I will say that Louisiana Tech finished much worse than I thought they were they will finish much worse than I thought they would have in the standings as well. Rough seasons for both of them. Another one that was interesting, you had to play on App State, and I was just absolutely shocked by the result of this game. 41-40.
He didn't show up.
Extremely in doubt. The outcome of this game was extremely in doubt for App State.
They didn't show up. If you remember Saturday afternoon, I texted you quite morosely, I'm going to go 0-3 again, Parker. Actually, just fire me now. And for a moment, you pretended like you were going to, and I understood. If I'm going to go 0-3 in back-to-back weeks, and part of that was like App State, sure, don't win by 2 touchdowns. But they didn't even show up. They needed a last-second field goal to beat it was I'm going to go with frustrating from the gambling perspective, and it has me doubting Appalachian State. I believe we both have them at 7-1. I think it is to win the conference. And if you're not even going to show up on a week in a conference game against the woeful Monroe team, I'm just not real sure how I want to feel about you moving forward. I'm going to avoid them for a week or two and try to reevaluate.
Yeah, your hope is just they just weren't motivated for it and just kind of laid an egg and they're going to get right. But man, it's rough. Like you should be able to sleepwalk and beat Louisiana Monroe convincingly if you are who we think you are. Another game, they might not be. Another game that is quite interesting to me because this one moved and had me terrified that I had missed something. Because I believe this was, at one point, this was BYU is like a 3-point favorite, and it jumped 0 out to Cincinnati plus 3, and I think I got it back at 1, BYU plus 1.5. And man, It worked out, but it was certainly in doubt. BYU needed an Emory Jones pick 6 really to kind of be the decisive factor there. Two teams I think that in the Big 12 are certainly in that bottom quadrant. Not very good either way. Pretty erratic both sides, but the elevation does win out there in that Friday night game as well.
And it was a situation where, like you said, that interception return for a touchdown gets BYU off to a 7-0 lead. But then they even needed a 15-yard short field to get the game-winning touchdown to go up 35-20. In the box score, you get outgained by 200 yards. The old Parker Fleming, did we really get beat that bad? No, Cincinnati, you did not get beat that bad. You frankly shouldn't have been beaten. It was one where I never quite figured out why the line jumped 0. I think it was 3-3 and then back to 1. We worried there might be a Keaton Slovis injury. That certainly wasn't the case. Never quite nailed that down. But yeah, you look there, the furthest team to the left, Cincinnati, of the losing teams last week, you did the best. Congratulations. That doesn't count in the win column.
Yeah, a whole lot of good that does, but predictively does help us kind of understand BYU. I'm a little bit low on them, and I think that it's reasonably a little bit low on them because between this and the Arkansas game, they've won 2 games they really have no business winning, largely due to kind of nonsense on the other side of the ball there. So definitely a very weird game that Friday night, but the last of mine, I think that I had a play on, and it cashed. So I felt good about it regardless, felt good about the process, even though the line moved, and was not a coward, did not hedge up, did not bet Cincinnati, even though I thought about it for a little bit. So feel good about that.
I never thought about it.
Yeah.
I was with you on BYU and I stuck with it. The altitude, whether that was the determining factor or not, my notes were always fade Cincinnati. And now it's just going to be fade Cincinnati, BYU, and Houston, 3 of the 4 newcomers in the Big 12. Fade them week over week until we find some bounce from any of them.
Yeah, well, speaking of fading newcomers, did you see the UCF down, up 30 points in the second half and just can't, just completely squanders all of it. Can't hold off a lifeless zombie Baylor team. Was one of the more shocking results, especially because at halftime it looked like Baylor was going to continue to be who they are. I'd be interested if Baylor. I think Baylor right now is a pick at some places. If Baylor got to, I think they started out as a favorite at Circa. I know for sure -2. And if you got, if you got Baylor in a couple points at home against Texas Tech after that win, I'd be interested. I don't think the line's right now, but it's worth something to keep an eye on later here because that is the stuff that dreams are made of. And Texas Tech certainly isn't great. Baylor with a little bit of juice could absolutely pull that off there. What do we see? What do we see with Baylor here?
What do we see there? Yeah, we're still right on 1.
So at 1, yeah, I don't love that there. I need a couple points. So I don't know if you're going to get it because maybe market's thinking like I am. The numbers I had have Texas Tech by 5 here, but I really think that that Baylor's in an interesting spot, especially if you can get a couple points. Douglas, let's check in on a couple futures as we do every week.
No, I don't. The future on the sheet, I don't want it. It's dead on arrival. It's not dead on arrival. But LSU to win the West, I have that at +215. It feels awfully dead on arrival. You can't give up 55 points to Mississippi and expect to contend in the conference. You can't lead by 9 with 8 minutes to go and give up 2 touchdowns. Remember Brian Kelly in the offseason, the preseason, early August, who was concerned about his defense? I see why. They gave up 700 yards in one football game, Parker. One football game. You're not supposed to do that.
Yeah, it's not what you want. Additionally, it is never good to be back a game and not have played Alabama yet. In terms of the SEC West race, so that's never a position that you want to be in. Yeah, really, really rough game from them. Can I just point out that Jaden Daniels is terrible under pressure? I don't know how many more times I can say this, but it is just evident that if you pressure him, he's going to make mistakes. He's not going to be able to create, even as he's able to scramble on some of those. He's going to give up so much to create those scrambles that, man, I'm just starting to wonder if it's not worth it. I think that
to get a legal pad and write on the back of it a sign that isn't Jalen Daniels terrible against pressure, and just hold that or mount it on the wall over your shoulder there. Because you're right. You say this often, but not often enough yet because it's not known enough yet.
Yeah, and I was surprised that Ole Miss dropped instead of they only rushed 2, and it worked out for him, whatever. But man, they gave LSU a shot there, and I wouldn't have. I would have pressured him the entire way. Ole Miss with a pretty crazy bounce back situation there. The week after playing Alabama for most teams does not go very well, and to come back and to win after being down that late and to show that. Some impressive resilience out of Lane Kiffin's squad, potentially some information that playing Alabama is not what it used to be. And so that's something I had flagged here as a little general equilibrium that maybe this LSU collapse and this Mississippi kind of steadfastness is a testament to the week after Alabama might not be such a gimme anymore.
Well, Parker, as we go into discussing the week coming, we should start with Alabama. But even before that, let's call out, folks, if you have games you want to discuss, if you have any best bets, if you want to tell Parker he's handsome, jump in the comments. Let us know. If you want Parker to sing to us, he told me that if 10 people get in the comments and ask him specifically to sing, he still won't do it. But hey, we can try to peer pressure him. We go into this coming week, and we should maybe start with Alabama, because if we just got that little bit of a data point, and now they're going to Texas A&M, I believe I saw one Parker Fleming is considering Texas A&M should be favored.
Yeah, I have Texas A&M outright, which terrifies me. It's the first time that all of my picking that I have ever had Alabama as an outright loss, not just against the spread, but outright here. Makes me extremely nervous. Don't love it at all, but I kind of understand it. When I look at this here, one, you've got to account for the fact that Alabama does have some pretty bad stats in there from a USF game where they very clearly were doing something weird. They were trying to prove a point or something that did not involve the business of playing the best football that you could. But even accounting for that, I have Alabama at 26th in EPA per play margin, Texas A&M at 13th. The difference here is the offenses. Alabama 89th on early downs EPA, and they're 36th on third and fourth down success. That means they're getting into those third and short situations where Milroe can kind of save them. But A&M's 12th in early downs EPA and second in third and fourth down success. That to me says that, one, the probability of getting into third and Milroe much higher for Alabama, and they're going to be able to capitalize against a quarterback who's shown that he can be erratic if they really can pin their ears and come back. So I think Alabama's offense, especially on their third downs, is really, really what's going to matter here. Can Alabama extend the drives? This is going to be haymakers, punch after punch. Alabama, not super great. They're in the 70s at finishing drives in points per equal. And so will they be able to make the most of opportunities that they get? Because those opportunities are going to be limited.
You very nearly talked me into an A&M bet there. I'm going to hold off effectively because I still have that LSU future. That LSU future is somewhat contingent on Alabama losing. So I already have some interest in this game. I don't need to jump in. I'm not about to doubt. I believe the quote is the most underrated coach in America. I'm not about to put money behind doubting him this week.
I am not either. If we talk a little bit about futures there I think producer Jacob put in the sheet or in the comments, our sheet to our futures tracking, I still have Alabama to win the conference. And I do think that's true. I'm not going to put money against them losing this game, but I do understand the spot, and I do understand them going to College Station, especially with their road woes. What game do you want to hit next? Again, these are big games. We've got some picks coming here in a minute.
There's a huge game this weekend that is the last of its kind. I'm sure they'll play again in the future, but it will lose this Big 12 flavor. Oklahoma, Texas, the Red River Rivalry. Texas is favored by 6, over under 60.5. It's the noon game. It's everything we like about Red River. And I'm going to tell you right now, as much as people are going to talk about the offenses, this total's at 60. For me, this is all about the defenses. Oklahoma's defense has been playing pretty well. What world do we live in? Texas defense looks real good. We saw it shut down Kansas's passing game. And it all going to come down to the defenses. For me, it's can Texas finish its drives? It has struggled with that against Alabama. It struggled with that against Kansas. It needs to finish its quality drives. Oklahoma might not be as top-tier talented as Texas, but if you're not going to finish your quality drives, Dillon Gabriel will find a way to make it up later.
Yeah, I think that's totally true. One thing that I'm interested in from this is there is a little bit of nervousness for me from Oklahoma's defense. On the numbers, they have been good, and even when you account for opponent, but you start to look at some of these teams, man, and just SMU, Tulsa, Cincinnati, Iowa State. 20 points to Iowa State. They gave up multiple full field touchdowns to Iowa State. That should be deeply embarrassing.
I noticed. Remember, that was one of the games I thought I was losing.
Yeah. And so I think that's that's something that I think that opponent adjustments are not capturing enough, that Oklahoma's a little overrated here. I have Texas to cover it at 7. And so I was toying with like a 6.5. I don't know where you can get that immediately, live right here, but rivalry game with my number right on the line, not a lot of love for me there. One thing that I think will certainly not stand is Texas has been really, really bad with those scoring opportunities. 89th. Oklahoma's defense has been 3rd. That's certainly inflated by some poor opponents there. So
it can be inflated, but it's still that quality.
Absolutely. I think that'll matter. And it's important to say out loud, Texas beat Alabama by double digits and in Tuscaloosa and left points on the board. Left points on the board. And so if they can get some of that right, if they can pull some of those in, Jatavion Sanders, I believe, is healthy and should play. I could see a world where Texas absolutely can finish those drives at a higher clip than we've seen. And we've seen that Oklahoma's number is a little bit inflated there. That's one that I will certainly love to watch, even if I don't end up finding the right price and making a play there. I think you can get -6 currently. I'd be more interested in that than a 7.5 that I think I saw on one of my earlier shows.
I want to reiterate the worry with Texas. Their first two, maybe not two of their first three quality drives against Kansas, they had first and goal on the 8-yard line. And both of those, they kicked field goals. That's the kind of concern. You can't do that again. You can do that with Kansas, but you can't do that against Oklahoma. It's not just that they left points on the field against Alabama. It's that they chose to leave points on the field against Kansas. It's that much of a concern for me. That is what I'm looking for. I want to just reiterate. You're right. They left points on the field against Alabama, still won by double digits. They can be that good. They left points on the field against Kansas repeatedly on first and goal to go.
And to what extent are they, knowing that they weren't great against Alabama, and they don't need to go super deep in their bag to create things against teams they're absolutely going to beat: Wyoming, Baylor, Kansas. And so maybe they're saving something for this Oklahoma game. I think that's certainly on the table for a possibility as well. But that will be the decisive factor. I think if we look back at this and Texas lost, we will see their points per quality possession being extremely low and realize they squandered opportunities. Not they didn't create them, but that they squandered. One more, we've got a Pac-12 matchup.
Yep.
All you. Take us there. I was going to toss it to you, so I like it.
I'm laughing at this game because it's arguably the third biggest game this weekend, if not the second biggest game this weekend. Rankings don't matter. Washington State at UCLA is that big of a game, and it's on the Pac-12 network. So nice job, everybody. This is why the conference died. I wish it had lived, but this is why it died. It's the 3 o'clock Eastern on Pac-12 networks. That'll be a noon local kick out at the Rose Bowl. Washington State, I am tailing the Cougars here. Not officially, not a big play, but anybody who beats up Oregon State like they did, I'm going to back for a little bit. Oregon State impressed me on Friday, the way they handled Utah. I know Utah's offense is limited, but Utah is still that physical of a team, and Oregon State kind of took it to Utah in that respect. I'm going to like Washington State here. I'm going to really, really try to figure out a maybe legal, maybe not way. We'll find out later to watch this game because it is – I have an idea. There's a new Circus Sportsbook open in Illinois. I bet they have the Pac-12 network.
Oh, they have to. They absolutely have to. Yeah, I think that's a perfect
I don't know how.
There. This one's kind of interesting to me. It does feel like Washington State has kind of taken the role that I thought UCLA would play this year, but I do expect UCLA to get better over the course of the season. Young quarterback on the road at Utah, I'm really not going to penalize them too much for that, but that defense is a little bit worrisome there. I'm really interested to see if every week it feels like, is Washington State real? And it doesn't feel like they're real, and then they continue to win. So I'm really into them. And I would love to see them be real, but of course, that I love UCLA. I love Carson Steele and do trust that run game pretty heavily. Although Washington State put up a pretty feisty run defensive performance against Oregon State a couple of weeks ago. So a fun, big matchup there. Douglas, before we get into our picks and get into our plays this week, we'll mention we are part of the Hammer and Hit the Books HQ. Make sure you subscribe to that. Hammer Content Network is huge. Tons of smart people all over different sports. Producer Jacob's on a couple shows. Producer Zach, who was in Vegas with us, is on a couple of shows all over the place. So make sure you subscribe, go find all of that stuff on the Hammer. And make sure, if you're here, comments. Would love to hear your thoughts on plays, what games you think are interesting, what games you think are stay away. Love to have that in the comments, and we'll certainly try to see those and interact with those as we can as we can see them and get them. But that being said, Douglas, let's get into some plays. Again, this week, we've got 3 on each side. We went 4-2 last week, 4-2. That's profitable. That's what we're going for. I'm happy with that. What do we have for this week?
We're going to start with you because one of our 4 wins last week was kind of a sham of a outright win, kind of a sham of an overtime cover. Jacksonville State goes down to Sam Houston State. Jacksonville State gave up 21 points to maybe the worst offense in the country in fewer than 13 minutes. Jacksonville State gave up a 56-yard touchdown pass, a 22-yard touchdown pass to maybe the least explosive offense in the country. Needed a 58-second, 8-point drive to tie the game, to go to overtime and get you a cover. Helps your futures play. You have Jacksonville State over 4.5 wins at plus money. They're now 4-1, and it looks to me like you're trying to double down and get that fifth victory as well as a spread cover this weekend.
I like it. I like it a lot. I'm absolutely appalled you called it a sham cover, because let me paint you another narrative. In the first half, Sam Houston State saw something with Jacksonville State's linebackers in coverage and put them in a position they were not ready for, a look they had not shown all season. Second half completely shut it down. And then when the moment came to it, Jacksonville State didn't think about it, just rich rodded the hell out of it and went down and won the game where it counted. So I'm going to count that one as not an absurd, but not a ridiculous one. I think that was Jacksonville State took Sam Houston State's best punch and still came out victorious, still got the cover there. I'm going to ride with them again. I don't understand this. I legitimately, I try to not be coy and be like, what are they Vegas thinking or whatever? How do we have Middle Tennessee State favored in any way, shape, or form? That's just shocking to me. This is an offense that just absolutely cannot move the ball. I think they're entirely getting overrated for a Missouri performance that we saw was very clearly Missouri, one, making some bad and conservative fourth down decisions, and two, just kind of mailing in before the Kansas State game. I have Jacksonville State outright favored by multiple points in this game. When I look at a game like this, two teams that are at the lower end of college football, 77th in EPA per play margin for Jacksonville State, 113th in EPA per play margin for Middle Tennessee State. I look, can anyone on this field do something excellent? Jacksonville State's defense is 25th in EPA per play right now. They're 36th against the rush and 58th against the pass. They have not been able they have been able on defense, to really, really stop opponents from having to move the ball at all. They were having technical difficulties. The screen is completely black. I'm going to keep going and see what happens here. So with Jacksonville State, I think that the difference for me here is just.
And now I can no longer hear or see Parker. So Jacob, give me a thumbs up somewhere and I'll keep talking. There's Parker. Parker, are you here?
I'm here. I just did an entire Jacksonville State monologue because I wasn't sure if it was me that dropped or if you that dropped.
I think we heard about 2/3 of it. I think I heard about 2/3 of it. So just pick up your last sentence.
Yeah, basically just Jacksonville State does one thing well and really, really kind of stops, opponents from doing good things at all, whereas Middle Tennessee State's bad on both sides of the ball. Big kicker for me, Middle Tennessee State's been awful on early downs, 117th in EPA per play, but they've been 70th in third and fourth down success. They've really lived and died on third downs. Jacksonville State's defense, 6th in third and fourth down success rate allowed. They're going to shut that down. They're going to shorten Middle Tennessee State's drives. I like them as getting points is just absolutely lovely to me. I would take them outright here too.
We have somebody, Howdy. Well, wonderful username. Howdy was about to ask you that, Parker. Would you go with the money line here? Personally, I would take the 3.5 and then throw maybe 40% of a unit just on the money line, protect myself a little bit. But you're giving a hard, vigorous nod.
I was nodding with kind of what you're saying. Like I really would just take the points because the risk is just so much better there. But then, if you wanted to toss a little bit there with 150 is decent. I mean, if it was a little higher, I'd be more excited about that. But generally, you 3.5 feels pretty good for what we've got this week. So that I totally agree with that, Douglas. Your first play this week is a sort of a sicko game, but not in the same way as a Jacksonville State cover. What do you got for your first play?
I'm going to back somebody who burned me last week. They burned me in a way that I was surprised by, because if anybody in the world needs a front door cover more than Brian Ferentz, I don't know who it would be. And he had an opportunity to go get some points on there, help his contract status. And Brian Ferentz turned that down, costing me a cover against Michigan State. And I'm going to go back Iowa again. Whether this is a psyop or not, the drive to 325, when I'm getting Iowa as low as -2.5, at neg 110, Caesars, MGM, DraftKings, and I'm sticking with the 2.5 number here. I'm not going to grab the juiced 1.5 at FanDuel. I checked the math. I reached out to somebody smarter than I am, had him check the math. You want the 2.5 at neg 110 in this instance. It is better value. And this is why we shop. You hear me say it. The easiest way to improve as a sports bettor is to use multiple sports books and always get the best odds. We use an odds comparison tool like BetStamp. BetStamp compares odds across every sports book for games, futures, player props. Make life easier, and scan that QR code. I always get confused pointing at the camera. Scan that QR code and you'll get brought to a page of signups to these sports books. So that's why we make sure to specifically mention which sports book these odds are available at to make it quicker for you to go get them. Hit betstamp.app/hit the books, should be in the show description, should be in the links, the comments, everywhere I can think of. This is why we use it, because that neg 1.5 at a neg 120 juice is less expected value than neg 2.5 at a neg 110 juice. And I'm taking this largely because the world overreacted to Cade McNamara's injury. We overreacted to an Iowa quarterback injury. Circa opened this line at neg 4 and moved it. It got moved to 2.5 or even 1.5 because Iowa continues to struggle and its offense is that bad. Losing Cade McNamara doesn't matter. He's completed half his passes this year at 5.6 yards per pass attempt. The Iowa quarterback doesn't matter. So I'm going to get them across a key number at home. I'm going to buy on that bad news and just take that value.
I like it. I think that's a very smart kind of market reaction. I don't want to bet on Iowa anymore, but I understand why you would in this situation. And I understand why you would certainly bet against a Purdue team that I don't think has been very good against quality competition this year.
I'm going to have a real interesting afternoon there where I'm trying to watch Washington State at UCLA at 3 Eastern on Pac-12 Network, while also trying to watch Iowa Purdue at 3:30 on Peacock, the world's greatest streaming app. Obviously, I mean, it's got the new John Wick. So of course I'm going to praise Peacock here. That's how I'm going to spend Friday night. I don't know how I'm going to find anywhere in the world that offers me both Peacock and the Pac-12 Network at the same time.
Might need your phone on that or something to pull up there. Just want to point out, Peacock is not giving me a dime. That was entirely a Douglas recommendation. I'm
Peacock
agnostic about
me a dime either.
I'm agnostic about the new John Wick movie. That doesn't move the needle for me. My second play, Douglas, is one that I don't know. I see this on the sheet and I think, my God, what have I done? But I'm gonna frame this more as betting against Illinois than betting on Nebraska.
Yes.
And that's how I'm going to stomach this. Again, I think we've got the wrong team favored here. Illinois is a 3-point home favorite against Nebraska. And they have just been a much worse team than Nebraska. I think Nebraska currently is it's 3.5 now. Perfect. Even better. And I think what I've got from Nebraska here is that they have been okay, except for the mistakes. And I know that's a crazy thing to say, but Illinois has been a team that really isn't going to capitalize on those mistakes like they did last year. I think Luke Altmaier, like I've talked about before, is a robot. He's a robot in the sense that he can do if-then really, really well. But if the game breaks open, he's kind of lost. 63rd in EPA per play on defense, Nebraska is, but they're 18th against the rush. Illinois tries to be a little bit balanced. They're right there kind of in the middle and rush rate over expected. Nebraska is super rush heavy. Illinois' defense this season, 84th in EPA per rush, 117th in rushing success rate allowed. I am going to believe in Nebraska to play a little bit more consistently, a little bit more rush heavy, really kind of speed this game up in the sense of the clock is going to be moving and not commit too many mistakes. I think they can overpower an Illinois defense that is just a shell of what it was last year. And maybe against my better judgment, I'm going to ride with Nebraska here. I've got a good feeling about this game. My numbers back it up, and I think that they're due to pull one of these out. So let's go with Nebraska 3.5 here. I think it was -109.
I very much agree with you. Fade Illinois, in my opinion, is a tried and true strategy already. I'm fading Purdue with that Iowa pick, but the one team I wouldn't fade Purdue against was Illinois, and that worked out to my favor. I did want to ask you, Parker, and usually if I'm going to ask you a question about your numbers, I warn you ahead of time. I didn't warn you on this one. Your numbers, how much preseason priors are still in them?
We're week 6. After this week, it'll be basically 0. I try to do it once everybody's played 6 games. I'm pretty comfortable saying like I know who you are. But I will say things like talent and recent history never go away. Those are going to be in it for forever. So the preseason prior, in terms of like, hey, I predict this is kind of what you'll look like. That number gets faded out as I get new data at the play level. But then, and I do some regularization early season to kind of account for crazy results. But about week 6, I'll say, look, I'm just going to go with, talent matters, recent history matters, coaching matters, but those preseason priors are kind of faded out.
So the recent history and some of your preseason priors still have a little bit of that leftover faith in Illinois' pass defense based on last year and not realizing it would drop off as much as it has. That included, you still have their EPA per pass against at number 78 in the country. That shows just the floor on this defense. It's not going to be like bottom 20 in the country, don't get me wrong, but I'm not sure we found the floor on this defense as a whole. That's not as applicable against Nebraska because, like you said, they run the ball almost exclusively, but they might hit them once or twice there because Illinois is prone to that mistake now on the back end.
Yeah, I really think they are. Obviously, defense is a weak league system, right? And Illinois lost a couple really, really strong links there and really kind of exposed the second class of that defense. Obviously, with Ryan Walters gone too, then adjustments become much harder as well. So I think there's a lot of opportunities for Nebraska here to take advantage of this Illinois defense, and that's why I'm riding with them.
And now we're going to go to one of my plays, and I forgot to write down some notes. I just pulled them up on my phone because I came across this morning. I am going against my usual moves, and I'm playing a total. I'm going against my usual moves, and I'm playing a Notre Dame game on the show here because I spend enough time thinking about that. It's kind of an oasis. But this Notre Dame-Louisville total is too high because Louisville's offense is not as good as it has shown. I am going to say this until I'm blue in the face. I'm going to pat myself on the back Sunday morning. Under 54.5, Notre Dame Louisville. I believe that's available at neg 110 pretty widely across the board, but especially at BetMGM. Getting that under 54.5. Louisville's offense is entirely explosive play dependent. They have just lived and died by that this season, exploiting teams like Boston College, who has the worst EPA pass defense in the country, exploiting teams like Indiana, who's bottom 50, exploiting teams like Georgia Tech, who's bottom 5 EPA pass defense in the country. They live and die by these explosive plays. Notre Dame doesn't give them up. Ohio State, before its game-winning 65-yard drive in the last few plays, had 3 explosive plays on the entire day, and only one of those reached the end zone. Notre Dame's defense is experienced and assignment disciplined, and that's going to keep Louisville's explosive play dependent offense in check. At that point, I'm going to love this under 54.5. If you get it at 54, so be it. It's too high. Players like Marvin Harrison Jr., Emeka Ibuka, and Travion Henderson managed 1 explosive play each before that last-minute drive by Ohio State when it was desperate. If they can manage only 1 explosive play each, Louisville doesn't have the players to do it. Notre Dame's second-best cornerback is 4 of 16 when he's thrown against this season. That's a 25% completion rate, obviously. Louisville's not going to be able to do it against Notre Dame. And Notre Dame's offense right now has some sustainability issues while it's out of players. It's out of receivers, almost literally. That combined with, I'm so low on this Louisville offense. Give me the under 54.5.
I have this at about 52, so I think that makes a ton of sense there. I'm still kind of holding on a little bit of hope that Louisville is on a learning curve with new coach and maybe getting better. But I agree there are some certain holes there, and I don't think they're receivers as much as I love Thrash. I don't think they're receivers for anything like Ohio State's. I don't think that's an unfair comparison. One thing that's important to point out: this game doesn't really matter for the ACC championship. Louisville just has to beat one of Duke and Miami, and they're good.
Yes, they have to beat one of Duke and Miami. And if you offered me a parlay right now, this show may be called Never Punt, Never Parlay, but I would take that future consideration parlay on Louisville losing both of those. I think Louisville's going to lose 3 of its next 4 games.
I think that's extremely possible. They have gotten by They've gotten by. They've skated by and they've underwhelmed. And I'm totally there with you. I'm just saying I'm pretty sure that we were talking about a flyer on Louisville to win the ACC just because they didn't play Florida State and Clemson, and it's kind of worked out pretty decently here. I'm checking the sheet to make sure that I'm not crazy. I have an ACC flyer for Louisville here. It's not insane. You got to beat one of Duke and Miami and then just not lose the games you shouldn't lose. Now, they're probably going to lose some games they shouldn't lose, but I think what you're going into for Notre Dame here is like, let's just not get hurt. Let's just not screw anything up here. So an under makes a ton of sense, especially because you basically got 2 weeks to try to get to Duke there. Yeah, very, very fun about that future. I just kind of remember that in real time.
We do have Wesley jumping into the comments to say Notre Dame's receivers are coming back this game. They're expected back. Marcus Freeman, like every football coach in the country, is publicly optimistic about injuries. I would expect Jaden Thomas back. I'm a little less confident in Jaden Greathouse coming back. But even with them, Notre Dame has 5 available receivers with them. 5 is you want at least 8 on a Saturday. When you have 5 receivers, including the 2 guys who are hopefully coming back this weekend, you just don't have enough players to get by. That shortens the game. Notre Dame very clearly shortened the game last week, punching twice from plus territory, foregoing a last-minute drive in the first half. Those kinds of things, shortening the game that way, protect your receivers and help this under. You there, Parker? You got one more.
I think
for us,
I'm
right?
here. I think my Wi-Fi is completely out. I switched to my phone, so hopefully it'll at least get me through the rest of the show. I have no idea what's happening. I have one more play here, and we'll get us through. No, the world's not talking enough about Fresno State. Mikey Keene was in an offense that did not work for him under Gus Malzahn. He filled in for John Reese Plumlee. He can't run, and you got to run to be able to run the Gus Malzahn offense. He's over in Fresno. He's dropping back. He's making multiple reads. I like what I'm seeing out of Mikey Keene. I think this pass offense for Fresno is legitimate. It is a real live offense. I'm already getting excited for Fresno Air Force in the Mountain West Championship, just because I think Fresno is that good this season. I have them at 20th in EPA per play margin, 31st overall in offense, 20th on defense. You've got a future on Fresno?
Air Force. I've got a Mountain West future on Air Force that I will, if it's Air Force Fresno State, I will find a way to hedge. I don't know who'd be favored, but I'll find a way to hedge and enjoy that game. I love the idea of an Air Force Fresno State Mountain West Championship.
And we're blessed this weekend because we have Fresno State, Wyoming, and we have Louisiana and Texas State, 2 legitimately very, very, very good G5 games. But I'm going to have a play here on Fresno. I like this passing offense. I think it's for real. 24th in EPA per pass. Wyoming, is 74th in EPA per pass, 93rd in EPA per rush on defense. Teams are rushing 1 percentage point less on average against Wyoming here. So really opportunities to kind of exploit that. And the weather in the mountains isn't bad enough for me to think, hey, that's going to be the biggest factor as well. I think this Wyoming defense is really struggling. This Wyoming offense can't move the ball very well. They're rushing a lot, but they're not very dimensional at all. And I think if this game was maybe 3 weeks later, I'd start to worry about Mikey Keene getting cold hands and what the California kid would be able to do up there in Laramie. But here, I think they're extremely legitimate. I have this by double digits just because of the passing ceiling that Fresno has here. So I'm going to go ahead and ride with the Bulldogs on the road as a favorite, as my final pick. I believe that is -5.5, -110 at DraftKings right now.
That has been a pretty widely discussed line, and I hadn't come to a decision on it. But to hear you say you see this as double digits, I'm going to have to bear down and study it a little bit more tonight. Your word obviously carries a little bit, just like an ounce of weight here. I'm going to have to see if I can get behind you on that one. I like hearing it when you're that convicted on one.
Yeah, this is, again, I'm wrong. I'm wrong a lot, man. But this is one of those where I feel pretty good about what Mike King can do. And coupled with the fact, like I said, it's nippy, but it's not cold yet. And I don't think that's going to be as big of a factor as it would be. I think Wyoming wishes this game was playing in like the Thanksgiving weekend. I think they'd feel a lot better about it. So I like the spot here for Fresno a whole bunch.
That's a high quality group of 5 game. Let me close us out with a sicko group of 5 game, a rather gross group of 5 game. Let's get weird. You hear me say fade this team, fade that team. That's because every Saturday, one of my notes is just fade this team. And I go back and I check why, but it's my way of remembering, something happened in this game. BYU, for example, the fluke scores last week to get by Cincinnati. It's like, okay, fade BYU, and I look into it. This week's notes were fade Southern Mississippi, and it's because it's such a defensive debacle. You can't give up 44 points at Arkansas State. You can't give up 50 points to Texas State and expect me to ever want to do anything with you again. One of the harshest lines I've written so far this week is name one thing UConn does better than terribly. UConn defends the run. Okay. I'm not sure there is an answer to name one thing Southern Mississippi does better than terribly. It is favored in this game, and that makes no sense to me because it's defense is falling apart. There's nothing this team does well. Like literally, you look at the old Parker Fleming graph, it's all red, and red is bad. So I'm going to take the Old Dominion money line. This game's available short of a field goal. Give me the money line plus 110 at our favorite book, Bet River Sugar House. They give us these great odds, and I'm just betting on Old Dominion to have 1 ounce of competency. It has a decent rush defense, and that rush defense really shows up when it matters most, giving up only where was it now? Giving up only 3 points per quality drive. That alone gives me enough incentive in Old Dominion at value with this money line.
I like it. I think that makes a ton of sense. And again, the part of this is the process. Look at the numbers, find an edge, and when those align, you got to make a move there. So that's that one makes a ton of sense. I don't love betting on Old Dominion, but I think in this spot it does make a ton of sense for what you could play there.
Parker, before we get out of here, let's real quick, 20, 30 seconds each. We had, was it Wesley Ask fading Oklahoma State? They've got Kansas State on a weeknight. I think it is, right?
Yes. Friday night. I had this at 11. I'm not sure where it is right now, but I think it was like 12, 11 and a half. And that's right about where I had it. I really don't like betting against Gundy at home. Is really what it comes down to. I know they're bad this year. Maybe I'm leaving money on the table with that, but I really am not. I don't know that I love, betting 11 and a half when I have it right there at 11 and a half. So I can understand it, but I don't think that I have a lot of value on Kansas State this weekend.
We had Dusk ask, is Arkansas quitting on Sam Pittman this weekend? Dusk, I was talking to a drinking buddy who lives in Arkansas, and he pointed out to me that Sam Pittman's contract buyout falls if he's fired when he's below 500, and he's coming up on that mark. That makes me think Arkansas will rally. Maybe not enough to win this weekend as significant underdogs, but they should. I think he's going to be able to coach them up enough that they aren't quite quitting just yet. And then the last comment I made note of, Parker, and maybe this is something just to file away and you can go into it on Twitter at some point. Dylan asked, how do penalties work into your modeling?
I generally throw them out. I think there was a time where I was trying to account for like pass interference, but even teams that do it a lot, it really is just a function of passing volume, and I capture that. So like teams that pass more are the ones that are going to induce more pass interference, not on an accounting standpoint, but I mean like on a rate standpoint, because you're being more aggressive through the air, and that puts defenses in worse positions. So I'm open to the possibility that penalties could be super decisive at extreme margins. I have not found a way to empirically improve my projections by including them.
Let me ask one follow-up question just for an understanding standpoint. If Notre Dame throws the ball against Louisville, draws a defensive pass interference, moves the ball 15 yards, does that qualify as a successful play on the drop back? Okay, no, it's just thrown out entirely.
Yeah, it's not a failure, not a success. It's not in the data. Yep.
Okay, glad we asked. Now we are a little bit over our usual type 45, so let's rapid fire sum up our picks. You want to go first with yours?
I'm happy to. I am going to ride this week with Jacksonville State again, plus 3.5 as a road dog, minus 110. You can get that a lot of spots right now. My second play this week is going to be, I'm so confused and I forgot about it. Nebraska, sorry. Nebraska plus 3.5. Again, road dog with a little bit more than a field goal in the hook there. That's minus 109 at Bet Rivers. This is just fading Illinois. And then lastly here, I'm going to go with a Fresno State, Mikey Keene, the legitimate Bulldog passing offense in Laramie against Wyoming to cover. I have this one by double digits, like this one a whole lot. What do you got, Douglas?
Well, I want to say, if you're that worried about that Nebraska pick, feel more worried, because I agree with it. Just let that really scare you away here, that I'm with you on Nebraska. My 3 picks this week, we're going to start off with Notre Dame, Louisville. That was an under 54.5. think the graphic earlier might have mistaken that. It's under 54.5. Notre Dame, Louisville. Louisville's offense is too explosive play dependent. Notre Dame's defense is too disciplined. I've got Iowa by 2.5 against Purdue. There's been an overreaction to Cade McNamara's injury. I'm just going to take that value and enjoy Iowa by less than a field goal at home. And take the 2.5, not the 1.5. The juiced 1.5 is less value. And then to close it out, I'm going to get weird. I'm going to get sick. I'm going to take Old Dominion to win outright on the road at Southern Mississippi, plus 110. It's a little weird. It's a little sick, but sometimes that's valuable.
Yeah, I think that is it makes a ton of sense there. And again, fading bad teams is certainly a strategy. Douglas, I want to remind everyone and make sure that they a cut in for producer Jacob. What's up? I want to make sure that everyone goes and likes the video, hit the Books HQ. You can get Condition Powers there a couple times a week if you're into that as well. Great stuff over there. Make sure you're subscribed. And thank you for watching. You can follow Douglas on Twitter at @D_farmer. I'm on Twitter @StatsOfWar. Other than that, we'll be here next Tuesday.